The first flight of the Baby Seagull is a very descriptive piece, programmatic even, using my guitar to tell the story of a baby bird learning to fly. These notes describe one particular fledgling seagull plucking up courage day by day until, and I remember this each time I play the piece, early one sunny morning, it finally jumped off the roof opposite the window of my maisonette on the banks of the River Ada. The baby seagull seemed to plummet, but I'm happy to report he made it, falteringly, clumsily, reminiscent of the birdman of Bognor Pier, but grown in confidence until ultimately, and you can hear this in the music, both bird and music soar effortlessly and glide out to sea. Let's cut back to the studio now for some top tips on how to keep your tremolo airborne. It really does help when you're learning a piece to understand the structure, how the piece is divided up into the various sections. And in turn, these sections, of course, will be divided into phrases, and you can think of phrases as being like sentences. So the whole narrative of the piece becomes much clearer, and this affects the way that you play it. Let's take a quick look through the three sections that make up this piece of mine. First, the intro, and there are lots of nice fingerings for you there. Now, 2 pages of tremolo, looking full of notes, but that's a tremolo for you. It uses loads of ink. Last of all, the outro. Now, here's the entire piece crammed onto 1 page, which I think is really useful for you to see. So take note of the 3 clear sections. The first and third sections, top and bottom, look far less busy. These are the intro and the outro. The scary bit in the middle, which looks fairly dense, is the actual tremolo itself. This is just for good measure, because although these sections have very similar notes, that's the intro and the outro, sections 1 and 3, the musical intention is utterly different. The music at the top is slow and hesitant, the seagull's still plucking up courage here, whilst the last section is played at the same tempo as the tremolo, and the notation is slightly busier, so it's a bit faster and a little bit busier. In both these sections, the melody is on the top string, and as with just about every piece that you encounter, the tune should be played appaiando throughout. That means rest stroke to bring out the tune. So, now that you're familiar with the overall structure, let's just focus on the intro and the outro. The intro, of course, is full of expectancy. People will know the title, The First Flight of the Baby Seagull. So it's full of hope and expectancy, uncertainty as well, and the accompaniment, interestingly, is only on the second beat in each bar of 3, 2, 3, 2. And the expectancy is increased by the rubato that you're using, so lots of rubato in this section. If you cut to the outro, the music is exactly the same, apart from the fact that it's played slightly faster. There's a completely different feel to the piece, because by that time, after the narrative of the tremolo has played out, we're convinced that the bird's actually managed to fly. So this is a bird in full flight, gliding gracefully, as seagulls do, and the accompaniment is on the second and the third beat, so it sounds a little bit like the job has been done. Rubato is still there. It's kind of a mixture of gracefulness and celebration, so that's your brief. gracefulness and celebration. We'll see what we can do. So, now you know what the outer edges of the piece are all about. Here's a first good look at the tremolo section itself, and this is the main part of the piece, of course. Check out the end of line 4 here, and you'll see the repeat marks. So that first section repeats, and that makes up the first half of the tremolo. Then the story continues through the next 5 lines, and this is where things really begin to flow. This is where that seagull gets the hang of things, and it's no accident that I've chosen a tremolo to describe a bird in flight. Here is a closer, more detailed look at the opening bars of the tremolo, within which you can see my very careful and finicky fingering. The sustained legato bass note, which is an open A string, is followed by the same A, but this time to be played on the 6th string with the 4th finger, and to be played staccato. See those staccato dots? The tremolo itself is also to be played legato. That means smooth and sustained. And to make this point even stronger, I tie or join the tremolo notes across the bar lines whenever possible, as with the tied E's across the first 2 bar lines. And there are lots of very careful fingerings, so do have a good look. The tremolo technique is always hungry for a constant supply of notes. Let's look closely at this on the fingerboard now, paying particular attention to the left hand. Now the left hand here is the main expressive thing, because I'm trying to produce staccato notes with the tips of my left hand fingers whilst leaving the open A string ringing. And the idea is that this expresses the indecisiveness of the baby bird about to jump off a building. You're never quite sure when the piece is going to get going, but then when it gets to the D chord, the mood changes, and the rubato is different. This is expectancy. You're never quite sure. Then he goes for it. By the time you get to that schmaltzy D minor 6 chord, he's obviously worked out how to fly. Well, although he can now fly, there's still a little bit of hesitancy left both in the music and the flight of the seagull, and here's how that plays out. Once again, I use the trick of a sustained dotted minim alongside staccato moving quavers. They're all played by the thumb underneath the tremolo. Now there's something here that's very important to me as the composer. It's the thumb that carries the narrative of the bird's adventures, whilst the tremoloing fingers, I want to sound like flight itself, the wings suspending the creature in the air. Look once again at this sequence and you'll see that some of the bass notes are actually played as harmonics, first at the 12th fret, then the 7th, then the 5th fret, and then the 3rd fret. That's a harmonic at the start of each bar of this sequence. Now look at the 4th bar shown here. It's a 3rd fret harmonic, which is both unusual and tricky. You need to gently depress that D string with the tip of the finger just sharp of the 3rd fret, so not directly above the fret wire, but just past it, heading slightly higher up the fretboard. Now, the story continues. Whilst the seagull is busy getting its act together, deciding when to jump for its next flight, there's a section where you have to ping out some nice harmonics. And to produce a good harmonic, as I'm sure you know, you have to get your plucking hand, your right hand, if you're right-handed, down towards the bridge, away from those nodal points. So it's worth making the journey down, especially for the harmonics. If you want a clear harmonic, you have to be right next to the bridge. There's a very high harmonic in this section, so if you just watch what happens to my right hand. And it's not just the harmonics, it's the many techniques we've discussed throughout these films that will help you show off your tremolo in the best possible light. Everything adds together here. Knowledge of structure to inform the narrative of the piece, all those little extra technical touches to help present the tremolo itself, and then the need for your fretting hand to have the best fingering strategy worked out so that it can feed the hungry tremolo machine. Only then can you let your tremolo purr like a well-oiled engine, or in this case, a baby seagull.